So you join me here at the salubrious members' den of a South London bar, and I found three members of the Front Row Union. To my right is Heath, to my left Phil Vickery, and further around Tim Payne. Now at the weekend we saw some great action in the first weekend of the Aviva Premiership, and it was a great weekend for the Front Row. In the Northampton Saints and Leicester game we saw 3 tries scored by the Front Row, 2 for Tonga Weir and 1 for Brian Mujati. I'll start with you, Keith. Do you think the role of the Front Row is changing and they've got to be more mobile in that way now?
I think they probably have to be more mobile, but it's unusual to see props score, unlike the 2 little fat lads over here beside me who might not be able to score that often. But I know it's part and parcel of it. I mean, it's great to see them, you know. We have to get up to the dark arts and do all the hard stuff inside in the front row, but to actually get over the line is no harm whatsoever. Tonganui's try in particular his first try was fantastic.
Yeah. And Tim's laughing at that.
Well, his name's actually Tonga Weir, isn't it? No, Tonga Nui.
That's my accent. My accent more than anything else, I think.
It makes sense to everyone else. That's all that matters.
So, Phil, do you think the role of a front row player now, with the emphasis on the attacking team, and so that the people have got to be able to get in there, get the ball out, do you think there's as much need for an old scrummager?
Well, I think it's like all these things. We have spits and spurts of, you know, got to be able to this, got to be do that. I think, like in any sport, I think the more all-round you are, the better you are as a player, and certainly with the way Northampton play, they have to have guys who can be, you know, comfortable on the ball and be able to play, but at the same time, you know, got to be able to scrum and do your hard bits. Whether or not you get the right balance in your game will be purely down to the coach, and if it's what the coach wants, then great.
Tim, do you think the need for there to be more mobile front rows means that we're going to see less scrummagers and then possibly less emphasis on the scrum as a whole?
No, I don't think that's true at all. Like, I think you've seen in the last sort of internationals and things like that, the scrum's really, it's been a sort of driving force on how teams are playing. And I mean, like Vic said, you know, players do have to be a bit more mobile, and you actually find now that your front 5 players probably do more work than anyone else on the pitch, because they're having to do scrums plus get around the park. And I think we actually worked out they actually run more miles on the clock than any other players.
It's become harder. It is. I mean, there was comments at the weekend that the whole shape of guys is going to change totally. That the big front rows will be gone. I think the scrummaging is going to become more aggressive, much harder. It'll be heavier, and it's. You still have to get around the field. You know, you're looking at guys getting bigger, but being fitter. It has to stop at some stage because the guys are in great nick at the moment. But it's. I think it brings the game back to the way it was supposed to be.
Excellent. Now, over the weekend we saw lots of penalties, quite a few for holding on to the ball. Possibly related to that last question, but do you think the ruck and the maul is still going to be a part of the game as it moves forward, or are people looking to get the ball away from that contact situation so quickly now that's less of it? Who wants to take that one, Keith?
I think it had to change because it was a joke and has been for the last few years. They changed it in the middle of the last year's Six Nations, which kind of upset everybody, but it needed to be done. I don't think they've figured it out exactly yet. And you know, all the coaches around the world are trying to figure out how they're going to interpret it. There'll be differences in the next period of time. It'll find its proper level, I suppose, in about six months or 7 months' time. That's by the time the next Six Nations comes around, everybody will be kind of pretty much clued into where they're going to be. You can't afford to give away penalties, so whatever the rules are, you have to play to that.
Do you think referees are keener on awarding the penalties in those situations, and it's in danger of turning our union game into more of a league-style occasion?
Well, I think there's always got to be that constant battle, and you know, us as players, the coaches, the rules, you're always looking for an edge. How do you interpret the law? The first weekend of the Aviva, you know, all the referees are right on it, you know, release, push, and then go back in. Well, you know, give it a couple of weeks, it usually fades away a bit, and then I noticed a difference in refereeing from our game to watching. I watched little bits of the Northampton-Leicester game, and it just need a bedding in period, but I think the most important thing about it all is, regardless of whatever we think as players or coaches think, is we need a product which people want to come and watch, because the success of our game is going to be driven through people coming through, paying for tickets, sponsorship. And as much as I love a scrum and a bit of a rolling maul, and the wind and the rain coming down in a close game, you also want to see some skill, some guys running in tries and we have to make sure we get that right balance. This might not be the complete answer, but hopefully it'll be a step in the right direction.
Yeah, anything to add there, Tim?
I think Vic's has hit it nail on the head there, really. I mean, at the end of the day, if it does make the ruck a bit quicker and the game a bit quicker, that's just the way it is, and probably going to see a bit more exciting rugby, and that's what everyone wants to play and come and watch as well.
Okay, good stuff. Now, as a rugby purist myself, I'm beginning to feel like there's a bit too many yellow cards coming into the game. Now, I used to like it when a referee would award a penalty, and then if it kept going on, then maybe they'd give an extra 10 yards. They seem to have taken that element out of the game, possibly only for dissent they tend to use it these days. And you very rarely see a 15-on-15 game finish with a one team in the advantage. It tends to be that a yellow card has happened, or as we saw over the weekend, 3 or 4 in some games, and the advantage is given that way. Do you think that's the right way for things to be done, Keith?
There is too many, without a shadow of a doubt, because you do want a proper competition. But it is about trying to figure out exactly what is the reason to do it. For a penalty that's given away, unless it is perceived as being absolutely cynical, or persistent, it shouldn't be the first thing. But to be honest, the guys have to realise as well that certain things end up in yellow cards. You just can't give away a yellow card, and that's because you're doing your team a huge disservice. If you're offered 10 minutes, it puts pressure not just for the 10 minutes, but for the other 70, because you're trying to, you waste a lot of energy covering for one body in a game of rugby.
Yeah, I think it was the first game of the London double header over the weekend where Andrew Small gave a penalty for a deliberate knock-on and a yellow card against Alex Good and for Paul Hodgson. Yet Chris White in the second game just gave a penalty for it. Do you think it warrants a yellow card, Phil?
Yeah, but I think that's a different issue. I think I've harped on for years about consistency of refereeing. At the end of the day, a referee makes a decision, you're not going to change it. But it's just making sure that consistency is there across the board. I'd like to see a little bit going back. You're warned, penalty, you're warned and you're told, and then given the opportunity, and then if you did persistently infringe, and yes, I think you should bring yellow cards out. But just to chuck them out there, it's almost like if they don't give a yellow card out in a game now, they'll probably get marked down by the IRB or something. So they've got to chuck a few out there just to be politically correct.
Yeah, it almost has that sort of X Factor element to it. And when's the yellow card going to come? Here it is. Here's the advantage. Sky Sports graphics. Everyone goes mad.
Yeah, I know. But the thing is, as well, with some of them, it's you get a yellow card for holding on when you genuinely feel that you're in the right position and you've done what you thought, but you've actually received that yellow card for the 2 or 3 guys before we've done something wrong, and the referee's just had enough, and you're off. But he has
to warn you for that to be the case, really. I mean, one of the issues with rugby is that they've tried to put a legal framework around every single part of the game, and in doing so you kind of lose a little bit of it. Rugby it's not exactly black and white, and in every ruck or in every half tackle situation, because there's much fewer rucks now, there's 2 or 3 penalties or 4 penalties or 5 penalties that could be given to both sides. So an awful lot of rugby is governed by the spirit of the game. And the players know what the spirit of the game is, so they know if someone has been incredibly cynical or not been cynical. If a guy tackles somebody and can't get out of the way, it becomes very hard if there's been 2 or 3 penalties given and he then gets a yellow card. That's wrong.
Yeah.
But that's up then to the referee to understand it. It isn't about ticking a box and saying this happened in the previous 10 minutes and I then had to do that. It has to fit into the spirit of the game. But there's a bit of gamesmanship fits into that, and there's a whole variety of different things. So that's one of the problems and difficulties of the game.
I think we could solve a lot of these difficulties, Keith, because we're trying to make it so rule orientated. Now, when I started, not going back in too many years, but if you got on the wrong side of the ruck, then you got shooed.
All players agree. All players agree with that. All players agree who have played that rucking is the cure of most of the ills. Yeah. But unfortunately, the administrators say that it looks too hard for the viewer. That's part of the problem. I would agree with you. I think if a guy falls on the wrong side, you shoo him out of the way. It doesn't slow up the game a whole lot. You don't give away a penalty. He gets a little bit of a few scratches on his legs or his back, and he gets up and doesn't do it again.
Well, that's the thing. If it's accident or you've done it once or twice, you think, oh, I'm actually not going to do that again. Or if you're being that cynical and you're being kicked that much, then the referee can get his yellow card out and say, mate, if you're that stupid and dumb, you might as well get off.
Yeah. I was certainly told. I did my referees training a couple of years ago, and they said, you know, you don't worry too much about if someone's lying on the wrong side, because you'll generally find that the teams will sort that out for you, and if they're stupid enough to even try and put a maul down or anything like that, they're going to get 15 pairs of boots on them anyway.
Not anymore.
But you can't anymore.
Yeah.
You got, I don't know, the independent boards, you look at the videos and all that kind of stuff. You can't do anything to anyone, which is, don't get me wrong, we don't want to go back to, you know, violence on the field and guys doing silly things. But
rugby was always quite good at controlled aggression, wasn't it?
Well, you know, rucking is part of the game.
Did you find it, in terms of the front row union, that if one or other of you, you know, was hard done by, that you'd maybe step in and help your colleague out, or just give him a little nudge and say, by the way, he's just outdone me there. Can you make sure at the next right you give him a good hit for me?
I'm never that clever to things like that.
Tim, ever been hard done by in that scenario?
No, I don't think so. I'm just more of a head down and get on with things, really. I think. Yeah.
Brilliant. Okay, well, I've got a couple of questions just before we finish from some people from the rugby blog. Ruggerbird Keith she's from Ipswich, and she's come in to say, were you annoyed at not being named Lions captain when Jono was? Because she's apparently still seething about it.
No, I wasn't actually. I know he's laughing. I can say with my hand on my heart, I was asked beforehand, and I recommended Jono because he was the man who should have been captain.
Okay, and just another one for you there. How much kicking practice did you do, considering your propensity to put boot to ball, drop goals for Ireland, all that sort of thing?
I did a huge amount of kicking practice, and I can say I was far more accurate in practice than I ever was. I tried 3 in internationals, 2 went subterranean, 1 actually got up in the air but didn't go over. But I did put 1 over for Quins against Northampton, so that's the only thing I'm actually glad that 1 went over.
During
the war.
During the war from Vic then. Brilliant. Now, Phil, from John Wallace, what motivates you to keep playing with the achievements that you've had when injuries seem to be more prevalent than ever? I know you get asked this question a lot, but for John, what's your answer there?
Love the game, love being part of it, and
simple as that.
Yeah, it's not a lot more. Certainly, it's not money, because money wouldn't make you do what you do. You know, you have to love it. And I'm just silly, really, because I just generally just love the game. So I will continue to do it as long as I can. No
problem with that. There's boys your age and plenty more up and down the country who are still doing it, who love the game. And Tim from Lewis Knights, watching the Tri Nations, how worried should England be for the autumn?
Well, I think, you know, we've proven that we could go down to the Southern Hemisphere and beat Southern Hemisphere side. So, you know, and Ireland did, you know, well against the All Blacks as well, and so I think there's everything to play for. So, if I went in not thinking I was going to win, you know, what's the point in playing at all?
Brilliant, guys. Thank you very much indeed.
Perfect.